Okay, should we get going? There's quite a few people already joined us. So I just wanted to first of all introduce myself. My name's 𝗥𝗲𝘆 𝗧𝗸𝗲. I work for Watco. We are one of the leaders of maintenance repair products, supplying a lot of anti-slip floor coatings, which fits obviously very well into today's session, where we'll be looking at slip safety and a brief overview of what type of instances can occur, and the products that are available on the market to help reduce those potential slips and trips. And also with me today is Christian Harris from the Slip Safety Services company.
Yeah, hi everybody. Thank you for joining. Christian from Slip Safety Services. I know a little bit about this topic. I actually wrote a book about it, about how to prevent slip accidents. And we support end users, insurers, lawyers, FM companies, and everyone in between. And we partner up with organisations such as Watco. We work with Watco to try and solve the slip problem. So looking forward to digging into that a bit today.
Perfect. So I mean, obviously it's a big popular discussion point. So if we just start off with having a quick look at the size of the actual slip problem, it's not necessarily just for England or the UK, but all of these types of issues can occur anywhere in the world. So in the latest lifting the lid data that Watco undertook, only a quarter who responded hadn't been impacted by slips, trips and falls just in the past 12 months. So it's a huge number that this type of area impacts. And then the latest health and safety executive, the HSE stats, show just over 600,000 workers sustained a non-fatal workplace injury, according to their self-reports back in 23-24. Nearly 31%, so nearing 190,000, were slips, trips or falls on the same level. It's the most common accident kind being reported. And then Christian, as you just said, you work with some insurance companies. So what's the split and the prevalence of slip that you're coming across and speaking to these insurance companies about?
Yeah, it's definitely a good point, because what we do as a health and safety community is we bundle together slips, trips and falls into a single category, but it's useful to split those out for all sorts of reasons. We work with AXA Insurance, for example, and if you look at the data from 2018, they spent 80 million, 80, on slip claims in the year. Right. Next biggest cause of claims was manual handling, which was 30 million. So slips was 2.5 times manual handling, and then trips was on top of that. So what my experience and the data shows, that slips is far and away the biggest element of that slips, trips and falls category. So if you take, for example, the manufacturing sector, only 3% of insurance claims are due to trips, and 38% of insurance claims are down to slips. So that just shows you that slips is a much bigger problem than trips.
Yes, yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, you know, the number one priority, the area that will always be important to everyone is providing not just employees for companies, but obviously also remembering visitors as well, providing them with a safe environment. But I think a lot of the time, especially conversations that we have with customers as well, it always comes down to the cost side of it. So we need to sort of come up with these arguments, obviously persuasive cases that you know, highlight these areas and encourage the investment, but also the time spent on these areas as well. Like you said, they're huge numbers from those insurance companies, and that's just one as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the cost is always an interesting question, because if you accumulate all these costs like the insurance companies do, then you see how massive it is. But obviously, when you start to go at a granular level down to an individual site basis, they may not have had a slip or a trip in the
Yes.
last 12 months or 24 months or whatever, you know. So, but just because they haven't had one doesn't mean that they're doing everything they could necessarily to prevent one. It could just be that they've been a bit lucky. So it is difficult looking at it in a very granular way. But that's when you need to start thinking about kind of some of the science and, you know, if you can prove that your floor is safe, like if they use one of your products, you've got the proof that it's going to pass the slip test, for example, and thinking about it from that perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, there's always arguments, isn't there, between the cleaners and the health and safety people on side as well. They want something that's easy to clean, and then there's the argument that they want something that's anti-slip, and it's notorious that there's always those internal arguments. But yeah, putting the emphasis on the safety, and you say you can only go so long on the luck side of it, of not having these types of accidents, and yeah, they can be you know, reasonably minor of hurting a foot or an ankle or something like that, but they go into much more serious causes and injuries, hospitalizations, and all sorts of things. So it is really important on that side of it.
Yeah, even fatalities sometimes. I mean, I investigated a fatality in a co-op supermarket in 2015. This is all in the public domain, so I'm not sort of breaking any confidences or anything. It's even on the BBC website. A man died after he slipped in this store, and Co-op ended up being fined £400,000 by the council as a criminal health and safety law fine. And then on top of that, obviously, there was a civil insurance claim as well. So, you know, as you say, lots of these things are minor. There's the high frequency but low severity, but sometimes there are very serious ones too.
Yes, yeah. And you mentioned the book right at the beginning as well. So something that you focus on is the chimes side of it as well.
Yeah. So chimes is something I came up with to try to kind of decode why slips happen. So the book is all about, you know, what you can do to prevent slip accidents, and we explore some of the misconceptions and stuff. But the core part of it is really, what do you need to know as somebody that's managing risk or managing a facility to be able to mitigate the risk? And chimes is really a good framework for that, because these are the 6 key reasons why somebody might slip, and therefore they're the 6 key areas that you can focus on to mitigate the risk. Shall I run through what that stands for, Chris?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Just give some insight into it. Yeah.
Cool. So it's a mnemonic. So chime stands for C is for contamination. So that's what is on the floor. So if you've got a floor that's perfectly clean and perfectly dry, then nobody is likely to ever slip on it. I've never heard of somebody slipping on a perfectly clean, perfectly dry floor. So what contamination is there? Where's it coming from? How frequently is it building up? How much of it can we withstand? All of these sorts of questions come under the C of chimes. H is for heel, so that's about the footwear. So, you know, some organizations will provide safety footwear for their staff, but just because it's a safety shoe doesn't necessarily mean it's slip resistant. And then with members of the public, obviously, you can't control what they're wearing on their feet, so you need to be mindful of that and think about, you know, how do we assess the risk, bearing in mind somebody could be wearing, you know, flip-flops or stilettos or whatever it might be. I is for individual, so this is all the human factors. So gender and age play a role. If you're an 80-year-old woman, you're statistically more likely to slip and fall than a 20-year-old man, and you're also more likely to be severely hurt, obviously, as you become older. But a lot of this is about activities, so pushing, pulling, twisting, turning, being distracted, rushing. All of these things contribute to a higher risk of someone slipping and falling. So to what extent can we understand, mitigate and manage those sorts of activities? You know, and that can have a really positive effect. M is maintenance. So that's about change of use, wear and tear, because floors will change, as you know, over time, and cleaning, which you've already referenced. Most floors are cleaned regularly, if not daily, but often getting into the nitty gritty of it, it's how effective is that cleaning. So I use the analogy of brushing your own teeth versus going to the hygienist.
Yep.
We all brush our teeth twice a day. That doesn't mean we can't benefit from going to the hygienist. And when the hygienist cleans our teeth look a hell of a lot cleaner. And cleanliness and contamination on the floor can obviously affect the slip safety. E is environment, so that's about the weather, obviously, things like condensation, but it's also the built environment. So entrance matting is a really important one. Steps and stairs, ramps and slopes, lighting, noise, all of these things are within environment. And then finally, S is surface, which is the floor. So there are some floors are more slippery than other floors. If you can understand your floors, measure the slip resistance, quantify how safe they are. If you start off with a good quality floor, a slip resistant floor, you give yourself a good chance of keeping it safe and preventing slips over the long run. So that's the 𝗪𝗻's framework.
No, perfect. No, thanks for that. That's really interesting, and I think just getting the floor right is obviously fundamental. Ensuring that a suitable flooring is there for any types of environments. Like you say, with the contamination side, it might be a constantly wet area, so just having a sign there can highlight that, because with people working in those types of environments on a daily basis, they get used to it. So a visual reminder, it's really important on that. And then the maintenance as well. It's again, everyone's responsibility, isn't it? If they're seeing that there's some broken up concrete or a broken tile, or that there's some trailing wires or something like that, it's not to ignore it, but to ensure that obviously it's reported to the correct maintenance or health and safety person at that particular company. And also, not necessarily daily or weekly inspections, but just having a walk around the sites as well is really important. Things can change, things can obviously be moved. A lot of maintenance is carried out with moving of machineries around, and it's as simple as little bolts being left in the floor or something like that as well. For it.
Yeah.
So
no, you're right, and the floor is fundamental. There was a study done in the US in the sort of restaurant sector, and that showed that 50% of the potential risk was down to the floor. So that's some data from the US. But I mean, in my experience, if you've got an area like, as you say, a swimming pool or a manufacturing area or a washroom or a kitchen where the floor is going to get wet or contaminated by something, from a legal perspective, it needs to be safe in that condition, because that's the expected condition. And if you go back to 𝗪𝗻's, let's say you've got a swimming pool. If you had a swimming pool and you put highly polished marble around that swimming pool or on the floor, it doesn't really matter how well you do on the other 𝗪𝗻's. If that floor is slippery, it's going to be very, very difficult to mitigate the risk. So it does, excuse the pun, it does sort of start from the ground up.
Yes. And I mean, I was just trying to think of some sort of real life examples as well. So part of not necessarily my current role, but certainly years gone by with Watco, I've gone out to many different sites. Earlier this week, sorry, I was at one of the royal palaces nearby us for their tennis courts. Or we've gone into car showrooms or distribution centres and things like that. I mean, one of the ones that always sort of stands out was a construction manufacturer for construction products in Kent a couple of years ago, and they had a huge loading distribution bay area, and it was perfectly flat, looked fantastic, with HGVs actually coming into these areas, forklifts running around. We had pedestrians in the area as well, but all of those forklifts were bringing water, contaminants in from outside, so they were almost like on an ice rink for it. So part of that was a site visit. We looked at the practicalities of it. You can't obviously have something too coarse because of cleaning. They wanted something that was obviously going to provide slip resistant surfaces, that was easy to apply, easy to maintain, longevity of it, etc. So we came up with looking to do pedestrian routes, forklift routes, the size of where lorries were pulling in as well, and unloading or loading, and in the end they went with one of our epoxy coatings, so a very durable product, but had a very fine aggregate in it, so it provided enough slip resistance to reduce the potential of slips, but obviously still looking the part for sort of their prestigious areas, and it was an international brand, so obviously wanted to keep up with the look of it as well. So yeah, that's the biggest sort of example that I have that always remains. But have you got any other examples yourself of going out to any sites in particular where they've potentially had issues or looking to mitigate the future ones?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say we obviously we do this day in and day out. I think one of the key lessons that I would encourage people to take from this is, I'll give you two actually. One is to get some slip testing done, quantify the risk, because lots of issues that we get called in to see are on floor surfaces that sort of look as if they should be anti-slip, and people have installed them or maintained them or taken on the building or whatever it is, and they've kind of looked at the floor and they've said, oh, that looks like it should be fine. But just because something looks anti-slip, it doesn't necessarily mean that it is. And the only way to really tell scientifically is to get the slip testing done. So lots of floors will look anti-slip but don't perform that way. That could be because they haven't been cleaned effectively, or it could be that they've just aged a bit or whatever it is. So definitely think about getting a slip test done. And the other thing I'd say, and you sort of picked up on this with your example, Chris, as well, was taking a sort of zonal approach. So I remember going once to an airport hangar, and it was a new building, and the tenant was an aircraft maintenance business. So they'd get aircraft in and do lots of maintenance work on them. And they'd had a lovely floor installed, and as you said then, it was nice and it looked clear, and it was very flat and looked lovely, shiny, and so on. And it had this kind of 𝗥𝗲𝗄𝗃 resistant. There's this particular oil they use in aircraft called 𝗥𝗲𝗄𝗃. It had a resistant layer on that and everything. So on the face of it, it all looked good. What they'd forgotten was the contaminants. So you've got the oils and the greases and the whatever. So what we suggested there to them was, doing the whole floor is obviously possible, but expensive, as you've already raised, and maybe not proportionate. So we suggested doing some walkways and some zones, so that where the floor was most likely to be walked upon and or most likely to be contaminated, we recommended sort of taking that zonal approach, increasing the slip resistance there, and in the other areas, just try your best to keep it clean and dry. So lots of examples that we can think of, but hopefully a couple of lessons there that people can learn about how to try and deal with the problem.
Yeah, perfect. And you mentioned the slip testing. So I've seen it and used the machinery myself, but obviously, it might be quite interesting. Are you able to just briefly explain what sort of the slip testing entails?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So here in the UK, we use a test method called the pendulum test, and it's called a pendulum because it swings. So if you imagine when you're walking along, what happens is you plant your heel of your foot on the floor at an angle, and you put your weight into it, obviously, and most of the time it's fine because it's not slippery, and then you plant your foot down and carry on. But if you do slip, what happens is your heel hits the floor and then it sort of skids away from you. So the pendulum test, by the way that it swings, it has a rubber foot on the bottom of it, and it mimics that interaction between the heel and the floor. And basically gives you a number, which is called a pendulum test value. And then there are three categories of risk. So if you score between 0 and 24, it's a high slip potential. 25 to 35 is a moderate slip potential, and 36 and above is a low slip potential. So there are lots and lots of examples I can think of where we've gone in and tested floors, and then when they're dry, they're well above 36, but when they're wet, they're well below, and they are in areas where they're likely to get wet or contaminated. And so that's where having that scientific approach is useful, because you don't want to be relying on, well, I thought it was okay, or it looked like it was okay. It's definitely worth getting that testing done.
No,
and you guys do that for your products as well, don't you? So
yeah, absolutely. And all of our products available on data sheets or via the sales and technical teams. They've all anti-slip products or gritted products. We have our own PTV equipment at our lab. So before we launch any products, or if we change the formulations, we're always measuring that PTV value, and like you say, both in the dry and in the wet, and obviously wanting to provide varying aggregate sizes. So you may have some readings where it's maybe 50 or so in the wet, and then going all the way up to the sort of high 90s as well. So a really coarse anti-slip finish depending on the environment. Which nicely leads us on to a question from Tara about stair nosings for high traffic areas. So, you know, from our recommendations, we've got a number of products depending on what the substrate is, so what the actual surface is that it's looking to be applied to. We've got what they call GRP nosings or step covers, so that's glass reinforced fiberglass with a coarse or an extra coarse aggregate on top as well, which can just be fitted and walked on immediately. Or if it's a lighter trafficked area, we can look at a couple of types of anti-slip paint as well. So there's and it's the same as going to sites as well. I'm sure you the same, Christian. You know, we have calls of I'd like an anti-slip paint, but it's just not as straightforward as that. It is looking at what the substrate is, how heavy the traffic is on top, if it's vehicles or just pedestrians, if it's internal, external, and certainly from our range of products, we try to incorporate all of those types of variations, and then pointing people into the correct area, and what's the best fit for application, but also cost and things like that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and contamination is important as well, because if you've got like water, you know, is one thing, but if you've got something that's more viscous that might be on the floor, then you probably need that larger aggregate, don't you? Or you know, using one of your products, for example.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I noticed the time, 25 minutes has flown by. We've got a couple of minutes left on there as well. So, I mean, for those that are with us today and watch this webinar in the future as well, what are the sort of key takeaways, Christian, that you would recommend, either that people can do on their own sort of own time, or if they wanted you to attend site and walk through them, what would you be recommending for them to do today or very soon?
Yeah, so I think that the number one thing I always suggest people to do is we have a tool called the Slip Prevention Scorecard, and it's like an online quiz in very simple terms, and you answer a series of questions. It takes about 3.5 minutes to do on average. And then what it does is it gives you a score for chimes. So it gives you a score for contamination, heel, individual, etc., plus an overall score. So I always recommend that as a starting point, because that will help you to just sort of understand where you currently are and see where you're strong and where you've got room for improvement. And then off the back of that, you can come up with a bit of a strategy, you know, because if you're really good at everything other than heel, then, you know, don't worry about a slip test or anything like that, or the floor, think about the footwear. Yes. Whereas most businesses are pretty good on heel, and they're pretty good on individual normally, but often they struggle with maintenance, surface, and contamination. Those tend to be the areas where we find people struggle a bit. So I definitely recommend to people to go away and give that a go.
Perfect. And that's a free of charge one on your website
free.
as well?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, free. So I think everybody in the chat will see a link for that. If you're sort of watching this or listening to this later, it's scorecard.slipsafety.co.uk.
Amazing. And then from the Watco point of view as well, I mean, we're not just manufacturers and suppliers of anti-slip coatings. There's a whole host of products, but also there's a whole technical team looking to guide and help people as well. So with any types of inquiries, any things that are sort of aren't the norm, for types of substrates or applications, or even timescales to be applying. We've got a whole host of ebooks, safety underfoot ebooks. We've got independent data that we've been looking at, as well as the individual product guides as well. And more importantly, like we've been doing today, it's always good to chat and not to quote a famous phone company. But it's we've got a team within the office in Guildford here that are able to guide people through, as easy as possible as well, and a whole range of product samples that we can send out in the post, just to let people have a look at the types of textures and the types of finishes that we've got on there as well.
I think one of the things you've said, Chris, that really resonates with me and echoes the way that we talk about it, is that it's got to be a bespoke approach as well. It's not, there's no magic bullet in this world for this problem. It would be great if there were. If it was simple as saying, chuck this stuff down on your floor and it'll solve all your problems. Obviously, that would be great, but that's not the reality. You need to be looking at this in a fair bit of detail, and in that zonal approach, bespoke, and that's how you can get something that really works on a sustainable basis.
No, that's brilliant. Well, no, fantastic. Thanks so much, Christian, for the overview and the insights, and obviously thanks everyone else for joining us today as well. So this has been recorded as well, so if you want to watch it again, please do. If you want to circulate it to anyone else, they'll be available on the websites and through some emails coming out in the near future. But also, it's really important.
We mustn't forget, Chris. We mustn't forget the survey.
Absolutely, yep. So we've got that going out on email in the next couple of days or so. But even more important than that is that there's a chance to win a £50 Amazon voucher as well for any feedback given to us. And obviously, most important, I don't know if it'd be a signed copy, but a copy of
we can do a signed copy, yeah.
I haven't received mine yet either.
Oh, sorry, it must have been lost in the post, Chris. We will get a copy for you for sure on the team. But I think we're giving away a couple of books for people that take the survey. So yeah, happy to give you a signed copy. That's no problem whatsoever.
That's brilliant. Thanks ever so much, Christian, and look forward to catching up with you soon as well.
Cheers.
Cheers. Take care. Thanks. Bye-bye.